Daniel tightened his grip on the phone as the voicemail played, the trembling voice whispering, "They know where you are," before the message cut into static. His pulse quickened, and he muttered, "Who the hell is this?" Just then, a piercing scream echoed outside his window. Daniel rushed to the yard, scanning the moonlit street, but there was no one there. The autumn wind pushed dry leaves across the ground, their rustle unsettling in the silence. He froze when he noticed something lying on the gravel path, a silver pendant etched with strange unreadable symbols. Daniel whispered, "This doesn't belong here," his breath fogging in the cold air. Fear clawed at him, but curiosity anchored him in place. The pendant shimmered faintly in the streetlight, as though it carried secrets of its own. Daniel walked back inside, locking the door with shaking hands. He leaned against the wall, his breath uneven. The voicemail echoed in his mind, the words digging deeper with each replay. "They know where you are." He turned the pendant over, its surface cold and heavy, the symbols shifting strangely in the dim light. "This isn't random," he murmured, pacing across the room. His desk lamp cast harsh shadows that seemed to move on their own. He typed the markings into his laptop, but no match appeared. The silence pressed against him until he muttered, "Someone wants me to find this." His reflection in the dark window looked pale, haunted. Something about tonight felt less like chance and more like an invitation to a nightmare. Daniel sat heavily in the chair, staring at his laptop screen, frustration mounting. "Nothing," he whispered, closing his eyes. He felt the chill of the pendant even through his palm, as though it carried its own unnatural cold. The clock ticked louder than usual, each second dragging into his nerves. He rubbed his temples, whispering, "I need answers." His phone buzzed suddenly, jolting him upright. A new message, "Check the graveyard." His chest tightened. The words pulsed on the screen like a command. Daniel muttered, "Why me?" But the sense of inevitability pulled at him. The scream, the pendant, and now this. It was all leading him somewhere. Daniel grabbed his coat and stepped outside once more, the night air sharper now, as though aware of his decision. He moved quickly down the quiet street, each shadow stretching longer than it should. The pendant swung from his pocket, faintly glowing against the dark. He whispered, "Graveyard," as if saying it aloud would steal his resolve. The path seemed endless, lined with crooked fences and dark trees. When he reached the gates of St. Michael's Cemetery, he paused. The iron bars loomed tall, their rust glowing under the pale moonlight. His hand trembled on the cold metal, and he muttered, "What am I walking into?" before pushing the gate open with a groan that echoed into the night. Inside the graveyard, silence weighed heavy. The air smelled of damp earth and rotting leaves. Daniel's footsteps crunched on gravel as he walked between crooked tombstones. The moon cast uneven shadows, some moving as if alive. He stopped when he saw it. A single gravestone, smaller than the rest, standing crooked at the far end. Unlike the others, it bore no name, no date, only a blank weathered surface. The pendant grew warmer in his pocket, pulsing faintly as though responding to the stone. "This is it," Daniel whispered, voice breaking under tension. His heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to run, but he stepped forward, unable to resist the pull of the unmarked grave. Daniel stared at the nameless gravestone, his chest tightening as a chill spread through his body. He muttered, "Who's buried here?" His voice cracked under the weight of silence. A crow cawed sharply from a nearby tree, startling him. He turned quickly, his eyes scanning the shadows, but found only darkness pressing closer. The pendant in his pocket pulsed like a heartbeat, its glow faint but steady. Daniel whispered, "Why me?" before stepping back, overwhelmed by unease. He didn't notice the figure watching him from the edge of the cemetery, a silhouette still and patient. The night felt alive, as if it waited for him to make a choice. Daniel hurried home, his steps unsteady as the echo of the gravestone clung to him. He slammed the door shut and leaned against it, breathing heavily. The pendant glowed faintly, casting strange patterns across his living room walls. He muttered, "I can't do this alone," as though admitting weakness would ease the dread. His phone buzzed again, another message. "Not all secrets are meant for you." His hand shook as he set the phone down. He thought of the only person he could call, Claire, the one who knew his past better than anyone. Thought of dragging her into this chilled him, but silence pressed harder. He whispered, "I need help." Claire arrived quickly, her eyes sharp with concern. The 32-year-old woman brushed a strand of blonde hair from her face and said, "Daniel, you sounded terrified." He handed her the pendant without a word. Claire studied it, frowning. "These symbols look ancient," she murmured, her voice tight. Daniel paced across the room, running a hand through his hair. "I found it after a scream, by an unmarked grave." Claire's eyes widened, and she whispered, "You shouldn't have gone there." The weight of her tone made his stomach twist. Her warning carried more knowledge than she was willing to reveal. Daniel stopped pacing and stared at Claire. "What do you mean?" His voice was low, edged with frustration. Claire set the pendant down carefully, avoiding his eyes. "Some graves aren't meant to be disturbed," she whispered. Daniel's patience snapped. "Enough riddles, you know something." Claire's hands trembled slightly, but she steadied her tone. "I grew up near that cemetery. The story goes that a murder was covered up, buried without a name to erase the truth." Daniel's jaw clenched as realization began to form. Pendant, the grave, the scream, none of this was chance. Daniel sank into the chair, his anger dissolving into dread. He whispered, "If someone was erased, then who wants me to know?" Claire leaned closer, her voice hushed. "Sometimes the dead refuse silence. Maybe you were chosen." Daniel shuddered, his hand covering his face. "I don't want to be chosen," he muttered. The pendant flickered again, casting sharp light across the table. Claire's eyes followed it nervously. "We need to find out who they buried there," she said firmly. Daniel lifted his head, meeting her gaze. In that moment, fear gave way to resolve. He whispered, "Then we start tomorrow." The morning sun barely pierced the gray sky as Daniel walked toward the library, his mind heavy with restless questions. Claire trailed close, her eyes scanning every passerby as though danger lurked in plain sight. Daniel muttered, "If anyone has records of that grave, it's here." The smell of old paper and dust greeted them as they stepped inside, the silence of the library contrasting sharply with last night's fear. They moved to the archives, rows of yellow documents stacked high. Claire whispered, "This feels like digging in bones." Daniel's fingers traced faded names until he found a section labeled Unmarked Burials. His pulse quickened. "Here," he said, pulling out a worn folder that looked untouched for decades. Daniel laid the fragile folder on a wooden table, the paper yellowed and brittle. Claire leaned closer, whispering, "Careful." Inside were handwritten notes, the ink faded but legible. A single entry caught Daniel's eye. "Unknown male, buried without rites, 1987. His hand trembled as he read it aloud. Claire frowned. Why erase someone like that? Daniel's jaw tightened. Because someone wanted him forgotten. A slip of paper fell from the folder, carrying a rough sketch of a pendant, identical to the one Daniel now carried. He whispered, "It's the same." Claire's face paled. "Then it's connected." The realization clawed at them both. A silent truth, echoing louder than words. The creak of footsteps broke the silence. Daniel froze, his hand instinctively covering the folder. A tall man emerged from between shelves, his features hidden under a wide-brimmed hat and long coat. Claire stiffened. The man's voice was calm but sharp. "Some graves are better left unspoken." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" The stranger smiled faintly, offering no name. His gaze lingered on the pendant before he turned to leave. Claire whispered, "He knew." Daniel's pulse raced. He was watching us. The older felt heavier now, not just with history but with warning. They exchanged a look, both understanding that answers came at a cost. Back at Daniel's home, The weight of discovery pressed hard. Claire sat by the table, staring at the folder, while Daniel paced. "He knew about the pendant," Daniel muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. Claire nodded, "and he wanted us to stop." The pendant glowed faintly on the table, as if defying the warning. Daniel slammed his fist against the counter. "Every threat makes me want answers more." Claire's voice softened. "But what if it's more than we can handle?" Daniel looked at her, eyes tired but resolute. "Then I'd rather drown in truth than suffocate in lies." The silence that followed was heavier than fear. Later that night, Daniel sat alone by the window, the pendant resting in his palm. Outside, the street was empty, bathed in pale moonlight. His reflection stared back at him, eyes haunted. He whispered, "Who are you?" as though the pendant might answer. The sound of a car idling outside broke his thoughts. He pulled the curtain slightly, spotting headlights lingering too long. His stomach sank. Claire entered quietly, her voice tight. "We're being watched." Daniel's grip tightened around the pendant. The line between past and present blurred, and the shadows outside felt closer than ever. He exhaled. Then the grave wasn't the beginning. It was the warning. The following morning, Daniel and Claire returned to the cemetery, determination outweighing fear. The gates groaned as they pushed them open, the air thick with damp mist. Claire whispered, "We shouldn't be here." Daniel shook his head. "If the truth's buried here, I need to see it." They moved carefully, crunching gravel underfoot, until they reached the unmarked grave. Daniel knelt, brushing damp soil with his hand. Claire froze, noticing faint carvings along the base of the stone. "Look," she murmured, pointing. The marks weren't random scratches, but deliberate etchings, weathered symbols that matched the pendant. Daniel's voice broke in awe and dread. "It's the same language." Daniel traced the carvings with his fingertips, the stone icy to the touch. Claire leaned closer, her breath unsteady. "These aren't random," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "It's the same script from the pendant." His hand trembled as the pendant in his pocket pulsed faintly, responding to the grave as if alive. Claire stepped back, fear flashing in her eyes. "This grave is tied to whoever wore that pendant," she whispered. Daniel clenched his jaw, muttering. Then someone made sure he stayed forgotten. The silence pressed heavy, every sound in the graveyard amplified, until even the wind seemed to whisper in warning. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind them. Daniel spun, eyes narrowing. A man stepped forward from the shadows of the mausoleum, the same stranger from the library. His coat billowed in the wind, his face stern and unreadable. Claire whispered, "It's him." The stranger's voice was calm but heavy. "You've seen too much. Leave this place before it consumes you." Daniel's fists clenched. "Who was buried here?" The man's eyes locked on Daniel's, cold and unflinching. "Someone who paid the price for truth. Don't make the same mistake." Before Daniel could speak, the stranger turned, walking into the fog, his figure swallowed by mist. Daniel's heart pounded as silence reclaimed the cemetery. Claire whispered, "He knows more than he says." Daniel stared at the mist where the stranger vanished. "He's hiding something." Claire's hands trembled as she pointed to the grave again. "Look closer." Daniel brushed away more dirt, revealing another detail carved faintly beneath the symbols. An initial? C. His breath caught. Whoever this was, someone wanted them nameless, but left this. Claire stepped back, her face pale. Initials aren't accidents. The truth gnawed at them both. This grave wasn't just forgotten, it was erased. And someone still fought to keep it that way. As they left the cemetery, the weight of discovery pressed harder. Daniel gripped the pendant tightly, muttering, "The unmarked grave isn't just a mystery, it's a warning." Claire walked beside him, her voice low. "And that man, he's not here to help us." Daniel glanced at her, determination in his eyes. "Then we find out who EC was." The pendant flickered faintly, glowing with each step as though guiding them. Behind them, unseen in the drifting mist, The stranger lingered at the gate, his expression unreadable. The secrets of the graveyard weren't buried. They were watching, waiting to be uncovered. Daniel spread the documents across the table, the pendant glowing faintly nearby. Claire leaned over, scanning notes with tense focus. "This isn't just a forgotten burial," she said firmly. "It was covered up by someone powerful." Daniel rubbed his temples, frustration mounting. "Then they're still watching." His eyes flicked toward the window, where the parked car from last night was gone, but its imprint remained heavy in his mind. Claire's voice trembled. If this was erased, it wasn't random. Someone chose silence. Daniel slammed at the table. "And someone betrayed that silence to lead me here." The words echoed with suspicion, even as Claire avoided his gaze. Daniel's suspicion grew as Claire hesitated. "You know more than you're telling me," he said sharply. Claire stiffened, her eyes flashing. "I told you what I remembered." His voice rose. "Then why did you react when I found the initial?" She flinched, silence betraying guilt. Daniel's chest tightened. "Claire, are you protecting someone?" Her lips trembled before she whispered, "I thought it was just a story. Until now." Daniel stepped back, the air between them thick with mistrust. Every shadow in the room felt heavier, pressing like walls. Betrayal hung unspoken, but it poisoned the air. Before Daniel could demand more, the front door rattled violently. Claire gasped, eyes wide. Daniel grabbed the pendant instinctively as shadows moved outside the window. "They're here," he muttered. The lock clattered, then silence. Claire whispered, "We can't stay." Daniel's pulse thundered. "Whoever they are, they're not leaving until we're silent too." The room's stillness broke when glass cracked from the side window. Daniel pulled Claire toward the back door, muttering, "Run." The air felt charged, danger pressing against every corner. Claire's hand shook in his, but she followed, the betrayal momentarily drowned by fear of what hunted them. They burst into the alley, breath steaming in the cold night. The street was empty, too quiet, as though danger lurked just beyond sight. Claire's voice cracked. "Daniel, they'll find us." He gripped her wrist tighter. "Then we stay ahead." They sprinted toward the end of the alley, shadows stretching unnaturally long behind them. A sudden figure blocked their path. A man in uniform, stern face shadowed by a cap. "You shouldn't be here," he said firmly. Daniel froze, recognizing him. Officer Harris, a once trusted authority figure in town. Claire whispered, "He knows." Daniel's stomach sank, betrayal twisting deeper. Officer Harris stepped closer, his voice low. "You're digging where you shouldn't. Leave it buried." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You knew about the grave." Harris's silence was answer enough. Claire's voice trembled. "You were supposed to protect us." Harris's eyes narrowed. "Sometimes protection means silence." The pendant pulsed in Daniel's hand, its glow reflected in Harris' eyes. Daniel whispered, "Then you're part of it." Harris leaned closer, his tone dangerous. "Walk away, or you'll share that grave." The words cut sharp as a blade, leaving Daniel with the truth. Betrayal wasn't behind him, it stood directly in front. Daniel stood firm against Officer Harris, his breath sharp in the cold night. Claire whispered urgently, "We have to go." Harris's eyes glinted, his voice steady. "Leave this, Daniel. The dead don't forgive." Daniel raised the pendant, its glow intensifying. "Then let them speak," he said, voice breaking with resolve. Harris stepped closer, his hand hovering near his holstered weapon. Claire's grip tightened on Daniel's arm. The silence stretched into a dangerous standoff. Daniel muttered, "You buried the truth, didn't you?" Harris's expression hardened. Truth was poison then, and it's poison now. The weight of corruption stood exposed in his words. Harris lunged, but Daniel shoved Claire aside and darted down the alley. Claire followed, heart racing. Behind them, Harris's voice echoed, "You can't fight this." They sprinted through twisting streets, every step ringing with desperation. The pendant pulsed like a beacon, guiding Daniel forward. He whispered breathlessly, It wants us back at the grave, Claire gasped. At this hour? Daniel nodded, grim resolve in his eyes. That's where it ends. The wind howled as they turned toward the cemetery, shadows chasing close. Betrayal burned, but truth pulled them harder. Each step carried them closer to confrontation. The cemetery gates creaked open as Daniel and Claire pushed through, breath ragged. Mist clung to the ground, the gravestones looming like silent witnesses. The pendant's glow intensified, illuminating the unmarked grave. Daniel dropped to his knees, hands clawing at the soil. Claire whispered, "Daniel, stop, this is madness." His voice cracked, "No, this is truth." He dug furiously until his fingers struck wood. The lid of a rotting coffin revealed itself beneath the earth. Claire gasped, covering her mouth in horror. The air grew colder, heavy with the weight of something long silenced. Daniel pried open the coffin lid, wood splintering under his grip. Inside lay a skeleton, fragile bones wrapped in scraps of decayed cloth. Around its neck hung a pendant identical to Daniel's, its symbols glowing faintly in response. Claire staggered back, whispering, "Oh God." Daniel's breath hitched as he whispered, "This is who they erased." The glow from the pendants intertwined, casting eerie light across the graveyard. Behind them, Harris' voice boomed from the shadows, "You've doomed yourselves." Daniel turned, rage burning. "You killed him, didn't you?" Harris's silence was as loud as a confession. Harris stepped forward, weapon drawn, his voice cold. "Some truths die with those who keep them." Daniel held up the pendant, its glow fierce. "Not this one." The two pendants pulsed together, light growing until it seared the darkness. Harris shielded his eyes, stumbling. Claire shouted, "Daniel!" The ground trembled, the grave vibrating under their feet. Daniel's voice shook, "He wants the truth out." A surge of light erupted, blinding. Harris screamed as shadows swallowed him, leaving only silence. Daniel collapsed to the ground, pendant dimming in his hand. Claire knelt beside him, trembling. The grave was no longer silent. It had spoken. Daniel sat slumped by the grave, his chest heaving as the glow from the pendant faded. Claire knelt beside him, her voice breaking. "You're alive." He nodded faintly, whispering, "For now." The unmarked grave looked different, its blank surface etched with faint new lines, as though it had spoken. Claire's trembling hand touched his shoulder. "The truth costs too much." Daniel stared into the mist, eyes haunted. "But it's not buried anymore." The silence pressed heavy, the grave's presence lingering like a wound that would never close. They both knew nothing about tonight would ever truly end. Claire helped Daniel to his feet, her voice unsteady. "We need to leave this place." He glanced back at the grave, the pendant clenched tightly in his hand. "It won't stay silent," he muttered. They walked slowly toward the gates, footsteps heavy in the damp soil. Every tombstone seemed to watch, every shadow whispering of secrets they had disturbed. Claire whispered, "What if they come for us?" Daniel's voice was cold, hollow. "They already have." The graveyard faded behind them, but its presence followed, stitched into their minds like a scar that would never heal. Back inside his home, Daniel collapsed onto a chair, the pendant placed on the table before him. Its glow had faded, but the symbols remained alive, etched into metal like veins. Claire stood near the window, pulling the curtains shut. "We can't tell anyone," she whispered. Daniel's gaze was fixed on the pendant. "If they buried the truth once, they'll try again." Claire's voice cracked. "Then what do we do?" Daniel's lips pressed thin, his voice low. "We wait. The grave will speak again." The room felt suffocating, shadows heavier than before, as though the dead lingered just outside. As night returned, Daniel sat awake, staring at the pendant. His reflection in the darkened window looked ghostly, hollow. Claire slept fitfully on the couch, her face lined with exhaustion. The silence fractured when Daniel's phone buzzed. His hand shook as he lifted it. A new message glowed across the screen. The grave is only the beginning. His breath caught, fear and anger twisting inside. He whispered to himself, "It's not over." The shadows in the room seemed to shift, alive again, waiting for the next move. The weight of unfinished truths pressed down harder than before. The following morning, the town stirred like nothing had happened. Children played, cars passed, life moved on. But Daniel stood at the edge of the cemetery once more, the pendant heavy in his hand. Claire lingered behind him, her voice trembling. "Why come back?" Daniel's eyes fixed on the unmarked grave, where mist curled like smoke. "Because it's not finished." A crow circled overhead, its caw echoing like a warning. Daniel whispered, "The dead don't rest." The wind carried his words across the graves, leaving silence that cut sharper than any scream. The story was not ending. It was only waiting.